Legacy of Leadership event. And so this is an example of what our committee has been trying to do more of, because the committee's been around for decades, but it's always focused on Martin Luther King Day, as it should. Getting the advertisement and the organization for the march and celebration for Martin Luther King Day. But we're trying to do events throughout the year now. And those events are meant to promote the ideals of Dr. King, which are compassion, equity, justice, and love. And so we've got a panel of what we are calling our mentors of social justice. And they're going to give us some words of wisdom today. But if you want to know more about what our committee does, we do have sign-up sheets up here that you can come and put your name and email address, and we'll be happy to give you some more information about what we do as a committee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Chigott, whose idea this was, by the way. And he's going to be the moderator today. So, okay, Robert.
Thank you, Jim. A couple of housekeeping things. Would you turn your cell phones off? And this is going to be about 2 hours long. And if you need to use the restroom, can you exit by the rear door? Okay, so as not to distract from your speakers. As you came in, there were little pens and paper, and that's for you to write down questions that you have. There will be a question and answer session at the end, and so just to keep your mind active and remember, oh, I wanted to write that question, I wanted to ask that question. So that's just to help you remember what's going on. Juneteenth was, the Emancipation Proclamation was January 1st, 1863. But a lot of the enslaved persons did not know about it. And as the word spread in the states, more and more slaves ran away because now they only had to run beyond the northern line and not to Ohio or to Michigan. And so, but the slaves that were in the territories didn't know about it. And the white people there didn't tell them about it. So, not until 1865 in Galveston, Texas, when the Union commander came to take over the fort, did the people find out that they were free. And so they started celebrating, and they called it Jubilee Day. And somewhere along the line, it got changed to Juneteenth because it was the 19th of June when they found out. Now, beyond June 19th, there were slaves in California and the Oregon Territory because people from the states that owned slaves would move west and they would take their slaves with them, and they would not inform them that they were free. And so that was another issue. But the epicenter of it was in Texas, in Galveston, Texas. In the states, the United States, in 1979, Texas legislative body passed a bill that made Juneteenth a state holiday in Texas. And so the first real celebration was in 1980. Right now, it's a national holiday across the country, but in some states like Arizona, it's not really a holiday because the state offices are still open, they just limit their services. Federal offices like banks and things like that are closed. If you are a state employee and you want to take Juneteenth as a holiday, then you have to take one of your personal days in order to take it and be paid. Okay? So that's a little bit of history about Juneteenth. And Jim went online and found a Juneteenth flag, which commemorates the Juneteenth holiday. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Sonia. She's on our committee, and she's going to talk a little bit more about our committee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Robert. Good afternoon, everybody. We're excited that you're here. I'm sorry we had to close the blinds so that we can videotape and you don't get to look at thumb view. And I suggested keeping the doors open so the bluegrass music could waft in during our presentation as well. We'll see. So we are the Martin Luther King Social Justice Committee, and we meet each month on the second Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. in the Elsia room upstairs on the second floor of the library. Is that how you pronounce it, Elsia? That's how we pronounce it. We're not sure who it's named after. But we would love for you to join us. You can come for one meeting. You can talk to Jim back there in the back about joining the Martin Luther King Social Justice Committee. And our main focus is keeping the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. alive year-round here in Prescott. So of course we have the event on his birthday, which this coming year is January 20th. And we'd love to see you all there for the march and the celebration afterwards. But we want to have some other events throughout the year. So this will be our annual panel discussion here in the library. We also have a concert coming up in October, and we'll give you more information about that as it comes together. If you signed up on this sheet, and you can do this after the program as well, then you'll receive the emails from the committee, and they are mostly just about our upcoming events. And then we have an article coming out in the monthly journal called 5 Senses. That's coming out in the next issue, and it'll be about Martin Luther King events and about the committee itself. So keep an ear out for some of the exciting things that we have planned. If you want to be a part of it, come join us, and we would love to have you. Thank you so much for being here today.
In addition to the things that Sonia talked about, we're also having a teen writing contest. We have Sonia Brown, a high school student on our committee, and she's a dynamo. She is a dynamo. I'd like to clone her and keep her here. Next year she's going to be going off to college. So this is how the structure is going to go. I'm going to introduce each of the panelists, and then we're going to have a group question, and the panelists will be asked to speak briefly on the group question. Jim is in the back, and he is our timekeeper, and he will be holding up a sign when it's like, when you're doing your main question, he'll hold that sign up 2 minutes before your 10 minutes is up. And then when he holds up the stop sign, then you have 30 seconds to complete your idea, okay? Then each of the panelists will speak on a pre-assigned question, and then at the end, we're going to have another group question, and then after that group question, then we're going to have a Q&A, okay? So that's the agenda for today. Catherine Lee first accepted the call to be evangelist in 1998. Catherine has faithfully served in the prayer ministry at the Bethesda Community Baptist Church in Phoenix. She is involved with church outreach that feeds the homeless and the veterans. James Kimes began his involvement in social justice in 1968 as an active member of the Arizona Public Employees Association, which later merged with the AFL-CIO. In 1982, he volunteered to help Terry Goddard and Calvin Good in their efforts to change the City of Phoenix elections to a district system, which led to more minority representation. After becoming aware of the access of the civil rights opportunities and resources was not equal to all people, he decided he would work to social justices. He now lives in Prescott since 1988. Courtney Osterfeld is the director of the Launchpad Center in Prescott. She founded the Women's Empowerment Breakthrough, a nonprofit educational organization for teenage girls in Yavapai County in 2003, and started working on developing it. The Launchpad in 2021, Courtney believes that teens are powerful people who can inspire and create a great change in our community. She is honored to support them in realizing their potential. Jeff Daverman has been an artist, an activist, and small business owner living in Prescott for almost 30 years, and is also currently serving on the Prescott Indivisible Steering Committee. Jeff is resolved and determined to contribute to the positive change and well-being of the current and future generations through impassive, creative, nonviolent communication and a culture of mindfulness. Howard Mechanic was an anti-Vietnam War activist who was convicted by both the county and federal courts for throwing a firecracker at an anti-war demonstration. Instead of serving the federal prison sentence, he lived as a fugitive for 28 years. During that time, he chaired the Arizona for Clean Elections, which successfully campaigned for the passage of a statewide clean election initiative. After he received a full and unconditional pardon, presidential pardon, Howard helped to write and pass 2 successful citizen initiatives for the city of Prescott, where he has lived for over 20 years.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to get this mic up because I can talk loud. And we're going to have a group question, and you can just jump in, but be mindful that Jim's back there and he's ready to wave his flag. And be mindful also of the other candidates, okay? Group question 1. Why did you decide to become involved in social justice? Why did you decide to be involved in social justice?
I'll go ahead and start that. Thank you all for inviting us to the event. It's a wonderful event. I'm sure we're going to get a lot out of this. Why did I decide to become involved in social justice? I looked at homelessness. Homelessness, I know, is a global issue, and the challenges of having a safe place to sleep, a safe place to eat are on the rise. With the inflation that we have now being on a record high, with the cost of food, shelter, and clothing, many are either living from paycheck to paycheck, many are living from their cars, many are living on the streets. There's work in that area towards being advocated to help the homelessness, but it's not just an Arizona thing, it's a global thing, and it takes everyone to be a part of it.
I grew up in the Cleveland area, and Shaker Heights was a suburb, and it was one of the more integrated communities in the country at that time, and still remains that way. I grew up as what we called, we didn't have the word nerd back then, but I was studious, and I was really into politics. Just to give you an idea, When I was 12 years old, it was 1960, and the Kennedy administration came in office. And I learned the names of all the cabinet members, which I remembered until this day. So that's a political nerd, starting at 12 years old. But I wasn't from any kind of radical background or leftist background. Our family was more liberal. And when I went to college in 1966, I went to Washington University in St. Louis, the 60s happened. And you remember, a lot of people here are going to remember what that means. I couldn't sit around while the Vietnam War was escalating, while my buddies who were being drafted. I turned into a draft counselor, and then I couldn't help people get out of the draft too much. A little bit I could. But as things went along, I took it upon me to be responsible for social justice, for issues of what we called imperialism at that time, besides the Vietnam War. Dr. King in 1967 said in his Riverside Church speech in New York, "This country is the biggest purveyor of violence in the world." And it still is. To this day, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the armaments we're providing for genocide, but it's a concern, and I've been involved after the Vietnam War issues. I got involved in economic justice issues, and so that's basically the background.
Panelists, can you hold your mics closer?
Yeah. Like we're eating ice cream.
Yeah, like you're eating ice cream.
Well, my name's Courtney. I'm really grateful to be here, and it's awesome to share. It's an honor to share space with such big people here at this table. So anyhow, my entry into social justice work really came because my mom was very active growing up and drug us to everything. And anytime I had an opinion about anything, she'd say, "Well, you should just write the president a letter." And I did that a lot. And I naively, as a young person, you get the automatic response from the president. That's their picture and it's autographed and it says, "Thank you for your suggestions." And as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, I thought, wow, they really take me seriously. So I think it kind of gave me a sense of what it meant to utilize my voice, even though I'm sure nobody was really reading those letters from little old me. But anyhow, I think that really inspired some confidence in me to continue to utilize my voice. And then I went to Prescott College, and you get the opportunity to do a senior project. And I'll never forget the dean of students at the time when I came in for orientation said, "You should choose your senior project as though your life depends on it." And some people chuckled at that, but I thought a lot about that, and I thought this is really an opportunity to have a whole organization stand behind you, and I may never have that opportunity again in my life. And so I did choose my senior project like my life depended on it, and really the launchpad stemmed from that. So I think what inspired social justice was just some confidence in utilizing my voice and feeling like I could make a change and having supportive community of people around me to help make it happen.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here as a panel member, and I thank Jen and Robert and the other members of the Martin Luther King Committee for making this event happen. And at 8:77, I'm thankful to be here, or anywhere else as far as I think my 2-minute speech was already given by Robert, but in 1968, I was hired by the Arizona Highway Department, which is now ADOT. On my first day of employment, I joined the Arizona Public Employees Association, which later became affiliated with American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO, asked me as a union heavily involved in politics, not only to get elected those candidates supportive of public employees, but it also advocates for better conditions and it advocates for better conditions in the workplace and other social and economic justice issues. I became a member of my local, which provided me the opportunity to attend many political events. I soon became friends with many union leaders and politicians and policymakers. In 1982, I volunteered to help Terry Goddard before he became mayor and Councilman Calvin Good in their effort to change the city of Phoenix to a district system. The district system would provide better representation and would make the input of the general public much greater. When I volunteered to walk in Calvin Good's district, which was South Phoenix and District 8 now, having been born in Phoenix in 1946, I witnessed things that I never had seen as a native of Phoenix. And I would walk door to door, and I became acutely aware that racial, economic justice was not equal for everyone. I later I was later elected to the NAACP Maricopa County chapter as a board member, and that was a real honor, and I certainly learned a lot there. How many months?
Negative.
Well, I'll finish my 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here. I will finish the rest of my
Hello, everyone. To echo James, it is truly an honor to be here today. Thank you to Jim and to Robert and the MLK committee for doing this, for continuing this effort beyond just a yearly event. I think it's a really beautiful thing. And it is really an honor to be among these panelists, these amazing human beings here today. I can't wait to hear what they have to say. So, when I was 12 years old in 1984, my parents took our family to Europe. We landed in Munich, and on our way to Innsbruck, the first place that we went was Dachau concentration camp. And I was 12 years old, which is still very young as a kid, but I was old enough to grip what that place was about, because I walked through the gas chamber and ovens. And then a little later on, back home in the basement of my parents' house, I watched this PBS documentary around that same time called Eyes on the Prize. And it was the first time that I had ever heard of Emmett Till or the 16th Street bombing or Selma or the dogs and water cannons, all of that. And I didn't connect it until quite a bit later, but the feeling was the same. Fast forward 20 years, there's an album that was released by Ani DeFranco and Utah Phillips, and in the whole album's great. It's called The Past Didn't Go Anywhere. I would recommend it. But the third song on that album is actually a story that Utah Phillips told. It was a conversation between him and his son about how he became disillusioned of being in the army in Korea. And he talked about that, told a beautiful story. At the very end of that story, he said, it was at that moment that I realized that it was all wrong, and it all had to change. And that change had to begin with me. And that really stuck with me. Because there's so many things that are beyond our control, but one thing that we do all have control of is how we show up. And so here I am. Okay, now we're going to move into the individual questions, and the first speaker is Catherine Lee. And her question is, what was your initial plan of action as a social justice advocate?
Thank you for that question. My role as a minister and a true believer and a child of God, I was reminded of God by his scripture in Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 to 40 that says this. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. And I'm just going to paraphrase the 37 to 40. Then the righteous will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry and thirsty? When did we invite you in? When did we clothe you? And when did we see you sick? And when did we come in prison to visit you? Verse 40, and the king will reply, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of these, the least of these, my brothers and my sisters and mine, you did it for me. So I had to take a self-examination of my own personal struggles. As a child, growing up in the early 60s, 50s, I experienced racial injustice as a child. Being called names, living in conditions that weren't healthy, not so much in poverty, but not having some of the things that other children had, using used textbooks in school that other children had used. The funding wasn't for a lot of the schools that I went to. Just trying to maintain an educational level as a young African-American woman, having a hearing loss, not being able to hear a lot, but still trying to pursue my education to be better. Not better than my parents, but to motivate myself to be better in life. And one of the greatest aspects I had in my life was my mom was a very strong believer of love. We weren't raised to be unjust. We weren't raised to be racially biased. We were raised to love one another. And I have taken that to heart as a young woman, growing up with the struggles and challenges that I have had in life. I could have looked at that and that could have changed my outlook. But my perspective was to gain a better me. And as I grew up, I wanted my parents to be proud of me. So as I look back now on my own children and my grandchildren, I want them to be proud of me as not only as an African-American female, but as a grandmother, a mother, a sister, a friend. And even as I see others that have been oppressed, it motivated me to look at myself and what I had to go through. And when I did a self-examination of my own personal struggles, I had to look at my own personal journey. And as I said, it's been an African-American female. Coming up in ministry was even a challenge because women didn't preach. That was a challenge for me. First, being a female, and then also an African-American female. God has been good to me. He's been good to me by those that he has given me favor with, that have really helped me in my journey to get where I am today. So I'm looking at myself as being a voice not only for my generation, but for the future generations to come. And I haven't heard a lot of advocates that was out there in my generation. There were some that were out there voicing concerns and ideals, but it wasn't enough behind it to push it where it needed to be. And I think we still have work to do today, even today. We're doing a lot with education. We're doing a lot with funding. We're doing a lot, but my main concern is those that are homeless. I see the oppress of those that are hungry, those that are tired, those that don't have any, less fortunate. I endured homelessness as a child. We've had people stay with us in our home. I've had people stay with me in my home. It's not an easy place to be, but providing a safe place for others is a good thing. But the times that we live in now, you know, it's fearful, it's scary. People are not apt to open their doors anymore and let people come in. My parents did a lot of work in that area, helping those that were less fortunate or in need. So when I look at this in my own journey, I have to look at the fact of what God has done in my life. And having that kind of experience and living with homelessness was a passion to drive me to look at not only being biased of what I had and had not had, but one of the things that I found with being homeless is that I can empathize with those that are out there because they are in the heat. Many are struggling with extreme heat. Many are in the frigid cold. Many just want to be heard, listening to their voices, listening to their stories, listening to what got them where they are today. Many don't desire to be homeless. Many don't desire to be in that path. Many choose to be in that path. But being a voice to hear what it is that they have to offer and to see what works and what does not work. Sometimes we can just close the encampments and clean it out, sweep it out. But that's a traumatic experience for those that are going through that because all of their life belongs are in those encampments. Everything that they own is in that. So when you sweep that out and you take that away, they lose a lot. To us, it's probably not a lot because we have our homes, we have a roof over our head, we have food, we have shelter. But to look at those that are less fortunate, that's traumatic. And to see someone go through that is a sad experience. There was a gentleman I encountered yesterday that used to be a boxer. He was homeless. He didn't desire money. He wasn't asking for anything. He just wanted a conversation. Having a heart to open your heart to talk to others, to make them feel that they're significant, to make them feel that they're valuable is a big plus in the society that we live in today. And passing that on to our generation and our children's generation, not to keep a closed hand, not to keep a closed fist, because someone helped us along the way. We weren't all at that point where we had it all, like they say, like a bag of chips. We didn't have it all at one point. Many of us today have struggled in the jobs that we have had. Many of us today have had loved ones that have struggled, even with the jobs that they had. Coming through this pandemic has been a big effect on many people, losing their homes, being evicted, losing their jobs, whether it's divorce, whether it's abuse, domestic violence. It's a scenario of things that they deal with, that they have to struggle with, substance abuse, mental illness. We look at all these factors. Even though we may not encounter them in our own personal life, there are others that are out there that are dealing with these situations on a daily basis. Some can't sleep at night because they don't have a safe place to go. Some don't have food to eat because they can't find a place to go eat. Many of the shelters are overfull, crowded. Many are families with children. The men have the hardest ratio of being placed because men are out there. They will place the children and the wife before they place the husband. Many families are separated, trying to be together in these shelters.